You're listening to Tech Recruit, a podcast that educates talent acquisition and recruitment professionals on innovation to attract talent across all industries. We're glad you're here.
Welcome to the Tech Recruit podcast. My name is Stacey Broadwell. I will be your host. And today we have Rachel Kraska. She is the Senior Manager of Talent for ShopRunner. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you.
We're very excited to have you. You were actually referred to me by another speaker who's going to be speaking at Midwest TechRecruit, Sarah Goldberg. She said that you were somebody who she recommended highly. And so, of course, I had to get on the phone with you and talk to you. And of course, you have some amazing stories for recruitment. So we're going to get into that. But first, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors. First, I would like to say thank you to ZipRecruiter. They'll be our sponsor for Midwest TechRecruit and also for this podcast, and also to Hacker Earth. Thank you very much for sponsoring our show. Now, Rachel, tell us about ShopRunner and what you do there.
Sure. We are a two-sided network. So consumer side, we offer benefits to our consumers like free 2-day shipping and free returns at over 140 merchants. And then merchant side, we are helping to build e-commerce tools that will level the playing field for them with companies like Amazon and Walmart.
Wow, good niche to be in.
Yeah.
When you say e-commerce tools, is that to help them sell or to advertise?
To help them, things to put on their website so they can help build a better customer experience.
Oh, I like it. And your role as Senior Manager of Talent, how long have you been there, and what is that role encompass?
I've been here for going on 2.5 years, and it encompasses all of talent. So we are a 2-person talent department. I report into our Chief People Officer, and that means I do a bit of everything. So I do hands-on recruiting. I work closely with hiring managers on, interview training, on helping to suss out what roles are and where we might find people, on interview preparation. I do all of our metrics to see, what sources are working for us, to help budget for those, to see, what we could be doing better, what we're doing well, what our success rates look like. And I interview and hire people, of course.
That's like you cover pretty much everything that we're going to talk about at the tech conference.
I'm busy.
Yeah, you are certainly. How many recs would you say you manage alone?
Usually about a dozen.
Yeah, that is huge, especially when you're managing you. So you have a recruiter that you manage, and is that recruiter full desk or a sourcer?
He's full desk.
Did you
Thank
train
goodness.
that person?
He came in as a great recruiter, newer to the field. So certainly, we've been working together to develop him as a senior recruiter. So he's been promoted since he started. But yeah, so we're always trying to get better.
Yeah, everybody's got their career path.
Yeah.
So speaking of which, I'm always interested in how somebody got into recruiting. And I find this so fascinating because no one generally says. I've had one person say they actually went to college to, I think, be in human resources.
Wow.
How about you? What was your journey to recruitment?
I have a degree in music. And when I realized that wouldn't be necessarily a field that would put any, money on the table whatsoever, I changed over to writing. And so I became a copywriter for the first half of my career. So I did content strategy, actual writing, social media planning, and I worked at a few of the larger ad agencies around Chicago.
Yeah, I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it says post-honeymoon performer and composer. That a labor of love, literally writes records, plays. Do you perform right now?
I'm doing writing right now. We're not doing so much performing, but I did for 15 years or so, for a long time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do we talk? I feel like we talked about this.
We talked about it a little bit.
We did. Do you have a website?
I do.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, posthoneymoon.com.
That is so.
But really look for the music on Spotify or Bandcamp. iTunes,
Yeah, okay.
I'll make 1 cent if you download anything.
I know. Well, we could use some during the networking hour at the conference. Maybe we could have you.
Oh, no.
Where would you classify? Because if I remember correctly, it felt like it looked kind of rockish, like rock.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah, it would be. We were generally classified as post-punk. So a little kind of like Susie and the Banshees, but in a more modern feel.
Oh, I like it. It's so fun. So fun. Okay, so you got the creative side. You went to school for music, and then you got into doing copywriting and content, social media, which now, like I feel like wasn't really kind of a component of recruiting before, but I always felt that recruiting, at least when I started, I felt like it was marketing, and because we're the first face and the people that candidates and potential employees speak with. So that social media aptitude probably was a good way for, I don't know, would you feel it lends itself well to recruiting?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think there are tenets of social media you learn that you, that you apply to, good tenets of writing and marketing that you can apply across any field.
Yeah, especially we do a lot of advertising online, specifically for, the conference and what have you, but a lot of video output, a lot of, managing that all online, which is like a big component of putting your content out there. Okay. So then how did you get into recruiting?
I got bored writing. I felt like everything was just click here, buy this. And I got tired of writing the same thing over and over. And probably like lots of other recruiters, I just happened to have like hooked friends up with jobs in the past. And I thought I might be good at it. So, so I was working at a big ad agency that lost a big client. And I kind of had a crossroads where I could have gone with the client to another agency or tried something new. So I went ahead and took the leap into a staffing firm that did specialty staffing for like marketing, creative advertising. Totally. Which was a bridge, as I tell people when I'm giving them career advice.
Right. And did you like it?
I loved recruiting. I will do my utmost not to work in another staffing firm because it's brutal. The money is amazing, but it is really tough.
It is that sort of double-edged sword a little bit because the money in it can be intoxicating.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. And at my agency, we worked both sides of the desk, so we had to recruit and sell. And I'm great at selling my company to people, but sales was not my strong suit.
Yeah. I bet when you stepped into an internal role, what was that initially like for you when you started seeing the other side of the internal recruitment side?
Number one thought was like, oh, that's why they never call me back. Right? Like, oh, this is what's been going on behind the scenes. It all makes sense now.
It's funny because when you're at an agency, you take it so personally, or you get really upset, and it causes you to like get on the phone more. But if you just knew the red tape and the having to deal with compensation getting approved or anything getting approved, or
Exactly.
the hiring manager had to deal with, you might.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or I'm like, oh, they're not getting I used to get so upset because I wouldn't get feedback on someone who interviewed until I was on the other side chasing people down for feedback. That's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's running around trying to gather feedback so they can give feedback to the recruiter.
So, so you started working internally for the company that was your client. Is that right?
I started working for a different company. It was a data management platform, so in ad tech, which was my sweet spot, was kind of advertising and digital marketing. So it was a pretty smooth move. I actually started as a contractor and then got hired on full time.
Okay, so that brings us to ShopRunner.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been there 2.5 years.
Yeah.
You're doing the whole everything. When you first came into the role, was it as encompassing, or have you kind of grown into like just managing everything?
I've grown into it more as we've grown and scaled. When I joined, we opened Chicago as our headquarters shortly before I joined. So there were about 15 people in the office on my first day, and now there's about 115. So initially just joined in a senior recruiting role, and there was that role, and then there was my boss, who's now the chief people officer. So she certainly couldn't cover off on everything. So as time went on, I started grabbing more and more of what interested me, and she started happily handing off the things that she had no time for. So that has grown into more of an all-encompassing talent lead role.
So you manage recs. What are some of the positions that you manage yourself? Are they tech roles? Are they sales? Is it everything?
Everything. Right now I have a head of product design. I'm working on one business development role, and DevOps lead engineer, and what else is on there? A couple product designers. I usually get a good mix. I've got a product marketing manager. So we try to, when I switch things off with my recruiter who works for me, we try to keep things interesting. The kiss of death is if you work on the same role, for a year and never get to change it up. So we'll trade off.
It's interesting because I had on my previous podcast where I was talking to Sarah Goldberg, and I asked her, and I'll ask you the same thing, what her favorite positions were and what her least favorite positions were to work on. And I admittedly said the project, program, and product manager positions, any of the PMs are for me like I get inundated with so many resumes that have nothing to do and are completely off base, but kind of at one point a little bit. So you have to kind of dive in anyways and really, be the detective on it. And I think she had a really good point too. Often the hiring managers in the company don't know entirely what it is that they're looking for. So I'll ask you, what are some of your favorite roles to work on, and what are your least favorite?
Well, I love product management, and that was really that's what got me this job here, is kind of how I was recommended. I don't like project management, though. I think it's very different people that you're working with. I have to say, I'm sorry to all the salespeople out there, but if I could give all my sales roles away, I would in a heartbeat.
So what don't you like about, what Sarah had the same thing. She didn't
really?
Yeah, she was like, but what don't you like about sales roles?
Like so much talking to get to such a small answer.
From the candidate?
Yes.
Trying to sell you?
If you meet a great salesperson, it's incredible. But I feel like I have to talk to such a much higher volume of candidates to get to a good one. It's just much harder for me to cut through the BS in sales.
Wow. Yeah, that's really, is it more cutting through the BS, but getting to the actual success stories that they've done? Yeah.
I think often salespeople are just used to, establishing this rapport and talking a lot. And there are those terrible sales techniques, where people will use your name, Stacey, and we've been
Yeah.
and so you get, it's hard to, you have to go through a lot of those to get to the great authentic people who you want to hire.
So let me ask your advice.
Salespeople, just certain types. Yes.
I loathe the project. What was the other one? Program.
Oh, program. Yeah.
The PM roles. What advice would you give me to distinguish between those and help the hiring manager give us a good job description? Like, what is your go-to for distinguishing on those roles?
I think they're totally different. I go at them by deliverables almost. What is the business need for a project manager versus a product manager? And I consider a product manager more of a creative type and more of a business owner, whereas a project manager is getting things running. It's getting stuff done when it's supposed to be done and estimating how long it'll take things to do. So I think one's more strategic and one's a little more tactical. I've never hired a program manager. I would have to look it up.
Yeah.
I'd be faking it if I gave
crossover. There's so much crossover.
Yeah. In some companies, they're product managers or project managers or vice versa. So anytime I need to do one of those, I'm talking to the hiring manager and getting a real clear idea of what the person's actually doing.
Mm-hmm. They can be interesting. I mean, if you have a specific, like maybe if it's an ad tech, I think I had, and it was similar a little bit to yours. I had 2 head of product engineering roles for a action sports company out here in Los Angeles, Red Bull. It was for Red Bull. It was like a few years ago. And one was specifically for their advertising media platform because they have a host of content that is all action sports videos, right? And how do they monetize and sell that? And how do they, get that viewership? And they have this dashboard. So they needed somebody to, manage that out. But at the same time, like that at least was very specific to advertising and like, using Freewheel, which is one of the advertising platforms that they use. But then sometimes I had this other one that was at a finance company, and I must have gotten like 200 resumes. That was project, product, and it was just, it was like dealing with the salespeople, like you mentioned, like everybody was telling me. And
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it has really been getting to know what the roles are and continuing to ask questions until I understand what I'm looking for.
The hiring manager in the finance company said, I want somebody like me. I want somebody like me who I can hand it off to. So I was like, okay, now we're going to interview you. Okay.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. In which I've totally been in that position before too, where I've wanted to hire recruiters to be me and take over my roles. And you can't ever quite totally hand off yourself, because you're passionate about things. Okay. So really interesting. You come from a creative background. You're doing a lot of the, you're managing your own recs. You mentioned you're doing interview training. Is that for the hiring managers?
Yeah, and the interviewers. So, and other employees who are interviewing. Yeah, when I came in, we learned, as you get to know a company when you're internal, you start to find the holes in the hiring process or what wasn't working. And one of the things we found was that a lot of people just didn't know how to interview and we didn't have a consistent process. So I put together a curriculum.
Tell me about what you did. I find this so interesting. So Lou Adler, who, he's going to be our keynote, and he's keynoted all my conferences. I love Lou. I think Lou sets a fantastic barometer for either if you've been in recruiting for a long time or if you're new. It's just like a good standard for how you can gauge where you should be. And he talks a lot about hiring, and one of the things he says is hiring managers do not know how to interview.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I posted online, it was either on Facebook or LinkedIn one time, do hiring managers know how to interview? And
that must have gone crazy.
It was nuts. It was so funny, but to develop, to take it under your wing, to develop a program. Tell me about that. What was that like?
Well, we're still in development. I will say we've got 101 out, but it's time to create 102.
Okay.
But I just looked at where we were weak, and I tried to take myself back to when I started recruiting. And I came from a completely different career. I was great at what I did, and a recruiter said, "Go find me this person, and you have to talk to them for half an hour." I was like, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to say for half an hour? What do I need to find out? So I try to cover some of those basics. Like, we hired, early on, we hired someone, we're in Chicago, who lived in Milwaukee. Milwaukee is an hour and a half from here. Like, that's almost recruiting I call that recruiting 101. Can they physically make it to the job site? That is something that no one had really learned. The person has to be able to come to the office during the business hours, unless you are okay with them not being in the office during business hours. So we started with some basics like that. And we were also getting interviews where we would come together after the interview for feedback, and it would be 4 people saying, "I liked him," or "I didn't like her." And that was it. So we weren't getting adequate feedback either. So we started talking about what you should look for, how to look for that, and then workshopping types of questions together that could help get at things you want to find out. So I don't think most people, roll out of business school or roll out of their career development understanding what a behavioral interview question is. And even though it's uncomfortable to ask, how that differs from walk me through your resume. So just starting to really dig into what the structure of an interview should look like. What are the things you need to find out, and how can you find out the things you need to find out? Oh, and then also a section on, please God, don't ever ask this question in an interview so I don't get sued. Didn't know we needed that one.
It's right. And you know what? I think those are often good reminders. What things can't you say? I mean, for our audience, maybe, everybody could always use a refresher course.
Oh, I've got a long list, but let's not talk about age or gender or ethnicity or politics or kids and whether or not they have them or what their plans might be. Religion, I'm sure you're aware of them, but we try to stay away from things that might bias us. Or might cause a candidate to accuse us of bias.
It's interesting because when I have a 2 and a 5-year-old, and when I probably one of the reasons or the things that inspired me to launch this conference to train recruiters to raise everybody's boats, in a way, was in being interviewed. And I really recall so often other women asking me if I had adequate childcare for my two as I was returning back to work. And they're like, you know how it is, like mom to mom, it's hard. And and so like you feel like they feel like it's okay to ask those things because they're
Yeah,
another woman too, and they're just but those are totally illegal questions.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's just kind of something that's a good reminder, because even if you feel like you have that rapport that I'm there, I've been there too, you
Right.
can't ask those things.
Right.
But yeah, it was one of those things that I actually even had another woman say to me, "Oh, you've been out of work now for 2 years, having a child. Do you think you still have that network?" And in recruiting, our network only gets better as our candidates get more experience.
Exactly. Nope,
And I was just like,
I've forgotten them all.
that is very interesting sort of question. So no, those are really good things. Those like do not ask, which coincidentally are kind of the same things you don't ask in a bar, right?
Right. At a party.
Mm-hmm. So age, gender, kids, religion. Now, when you're training the hiring managers, do you do this training each time there's a new role and you've structured the interview team?
We've done it a couple times a year. So we don't do, each time there's a new role, we do what we call a pre-huddle. So we get everyone in a room. We make sure they understand what the job is about and what the measures of success are for. And then we assign out different, subjects for them to interview. And if there are people who haven't interviewed before or who don't know what to ask, we'll assist there. But then we're trying to do our interview training. We're going to shoot for quarterly. Right now, we're maybe every 6 months. So it could be better.
So each of the interviewers focuses on a separate area.
Mm-hmm.
And are there times when and do they interview one-on-one, or are there sometimes when there's group interviews, or does it just depend on the role?
At most 2-on-1. So occasionally if we do a coding interview, there might be 2 engineers, interviewing another engineer, or sometimes we'd like to put in maybe a more senior engineer and a less senior engineer interviewing someone, so that a less senior person or less experienced person can start to learn how to interview. So I like to pair people off for that sort of thing.
We had a really at LAX TechRecruit that happened just a month ago, actually. Candace Taylor spoke. She is in a similar role as you, actually, at Chow Now, and she spoke about how they were in the same situation. They had to redevelop the entire interview process and how they designed that and the outcomes it would have. And how they like tied their job descriptions and their reviews to all that sort of thing. And it was a really interesting talk, because you don't think how intricate the actual development of a sound interview process can be.
Right. And rolling that back to the subject that we'll be talking about, how that interview process can affect bias in the hiring process.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
Have you experienced, like, when you've had certain interviewers go in, have you maybe even seen their biases and had to point it out to them? Like, that's bias. You can't have that view, or you can't say that, and maybe had to say, okay, you can't interview anymore. I've wondered if
I haven't had to. When we first got in, there was one person we had to pull off of interviewing. But I haven't had to permanently pull anyone off of interviewing. I have on occasion had to follow up with some feedback, some constructive feedback. More often when I see bias, it can be almost in favor of someone, not almost, exactly in favor of someone that the interviewer knows or is friend of a friend or used to work where they worked. So what I have seen in ShopRunner, which is a high growth company that started, hit the ground running. We need to find people as soon as we can. We have to hire 40 people in this office in 3 months. How do we do that? We're going to call everyone we know. Was trying to slow the process down enough to make sure we were evaluating people beyond I liked working with them at my last job.
Yeah, definitely like the that sort of evaluation or assessment of someone. While it's a great way to get you in the door, yeah, going beyond that can be the real challenge. So
yeah, and who is that door closing on that you might have talked to had you not jumped at the first person you knew? So.
And great that they know a lot of people to bring them in the door, but yeah,
it's amazing.
That's a really good point.
It's the mark of a great person is that people want to follow them to a new job. So it's finding that balance and meeting the business needs of growing really quickly too.
Oh, what a dream though to have enough people working for ShopRunner that they have this network of people that they're referring all the time.
Yeah.
I often think that is the mark of a good company if the employees are actually referring.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I was doing some research. I actually just in Chicago alone, and I saw that ShopRunner was listed on one of the top places to work in Chicago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I forgot what listed.
I agree.
It might have been built in or something like that.
That could be. I should know, and I apologize for not knowing. But I know built-in likes us.
Do they really? Oh, do you guys host a lot of events?
We do a lot of work on their platform. So they're in Chicago. They're going to love this. In Chicago, they are a critical platform for sharing jobs. So if you're a high growth company in Chicago or a startup, you have to have a relationship with them. And they just got funding. They should give me a kickback right now for that.
For that endorsement?
Right.
I know that they're headquartered in Chicago. They have locations in Los Angeles too. There's a built in LA. And I think like 6 or 10 other cities that they have a good hold on, or they market in. And I've spoken with a couple companies who are either startups or even aging companies,
right,
who are trying to be a little bit more startup. Hallmark Labs, for instance.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you've heard of Hallmark.
I have.
Not a new company, right?
I just saw a Queer Eye for Straight Guy that featured a project manager from Hallmark.
Really?
That went off the rails. I'll take it back to recruiting. Yeah.
I didn't see that one, but their whole thing is the employer branding, how do we make ourselves appear like we're not a dinosaur of a company, but that we have really cool technologies and we are a great place to work. And, and while built-in is really more for the startups and not like the established companies, this was this sort of way for them to attract those candidates who might want to work at a startup. It was kind of like the employer branding sort of approach. But I know that they host events at, like, you could do like an annual package. I don't know if you guys are on that whole platform.
Yeah, we do. I think they've got all sorts of different levels of engagement, but we do a certain amount with them.
Okay. So, that's so cool. So yes, you guys are on that list. So speaking of events, you are going to be speaking at Midwest TechRecruit. It's September 18th. You came recommended to me as somebody who can impart some amazing knowledge to our audience. I had reached out to you, and lo and behold, I was like, yes, please bring this to our audience. You would be so kind. Tell us, what is it that you're going to be speaking about?
So I will be speaking at Midwest TechRecruit about building a balanced pipeline. I'll be sharing some small changes you can make to your recruiting process right now that will affect long-term change in the composition of your organization.
What are some of the things that our audience can expect to learn from that? What was your challenge?
When I joined ShopRunner?
Yeah, to kind of think of this as something that you would want to impart.
Yeah, sure. When I joined, we, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, we were trying to grow as quickly as we could with a core team that had all worked at the same company before. So almost everyone knew one another. Almost everyone had come from the same company. And 6 months into my role here, and I'll look at, because it's tech recruiting, I'll look specifically at our tech organization. It was 8 out of 10, I think, had managers had all come from the same company. 9 out of 10 were men and 9 out of 10 were white men. So we had not done an amazing job of building a company that reflects the users of our product.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to take, and you know, certainly my boss had to take a hard look at what we were doing and what we could change to make the company look different, and function differently and have more points of view. And that really fundamentally changes your product development.
Can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm asking questions, right?
Sure.
Why do you prefer the word balanced over diversity or diverse?
I think that when you are talking about, let me think about the answer to this.
I know it's a delicate answer.
No, I do not like to think about things in terms almost of quotas, and not that I think diversity is a quota, but I think that's become such a big buzzword that has connotations of who you're looking for and exactly what you're looking for. And I think when you look at your team, you want to think about balance. And is everyone from the same place? Does everyone look the same? Are they all the same age? Do they have the same socioeconomic background? Do they have the same employment history? You want to think about having different opinions and different backgrounds. And also I want to give credit that I do a lot of reading, as we all do, and that I first heard about this from Atlassian, but I thought that makes so much more sense than just saying, you know, when you talk about, oh, I want to hire diversity, that you're almost tokenizing people. And I don't want to be doing that. We're not looking for ever anyone of a specific look or color or background. We just want to make sure that we're not building a homogeneous company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find that what you said to be just such an organic and refreshing take. And that's the first time I've heard it actually addressed. However, you know, like as I've been doing this conference, and speaking with so many speakers, and we've had this topic at our conference, and it comes up all the time on the diversity front, it has almost seemed to become like a percentage, and what is your, and just quantifying it.
And I personally don't like that, because of the nature of recruiting. Your job is to find the best person for the job. And you know it from being a recruiter, you don't know where you're going to find that person or how it's going to work. And I have never predicted correctly once what kind of person I would find that would fit the role, or what background they would have, or what, So I think of it as making incremental changes to your process to make it more equitable and more fair. And that down the line begins to change the composition of your team.
So those internal referrals by the same people can, while great, that's wonderful. That's a show of a great company like we talked about, but also can present a problem down the line. Do you want to share? I think
if you hire all of them, sorry to interrupt.
Oh, sure, that's okay.
Yeah, I think the issue is if they're not vetted, they can. If they are brought into the exclusion of looking at more people, if it's unbalanced. So that's good. I'm going to use that word again.
Yeah, no, that's really good. So outside of like, yes, get the referrals, vet them, but also see other, you know, candidates as well. Are there specific places that you have to go outside of maybe LinkedIn or what have you? Are there certain avenues that maybe you take that are those tweaks?
Yeah, in terms of sourcing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. And it's different in any community, but every community has groups and resource groups. Chicago, Sarah is one of the, Sarah Goldberg runs, or is one of the people who runs Queer Tech Clubs. So, so that's a great group. There are tons of meetups in Chicago. There's the Anita Borg Society. I could go on forever. There's a great Slack group called Shy Tech Diversity. There's a great Slack group called The Brave Space. There are all sorts of educational organizations. There's Girls Who Code. I think there's Black Women Who Tech. There's all kinds of groups. So part of it is getting connected with some of those groups, or figuring out which employees in your company are connected with those groups. So we made a hire off of once hosting someone we hosted Pi Ladies, so Python, women who code Python, and we met someone there, and a few months down the line, that person was interviewing with us. So it's these things. I wasn't going there looking for someone. We didn't have a role open, but that person happened to come to our company. See that we have an amazing group of data scientists, several of whom are women, and data engineers, and came back to ShopRunner later when they were looking. So.
What are some of the best places to find, like, meetups, Facebook groups?
Mm-hmm. I have not tried any Facebook groups. That doesn't mean that they aren't there. Yeah. I'm just not there. I like meetups are great. I think just getting out and going to them and meeting people, because you'll hear about something, from one person or another. It's kind of like a little trail of breadcrumbs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of shy, so that's like the most difficult thing about my job is going to meetups and chatting with people. I can get up in front of a crowd of people, no problem, but one-on-one conversations in that kind of setting, very nerve-wracking for me.
So as we close, first off, I'm gonna play us out to some of your music, and then,
oh my God,
surprise! And then if anybody wants to find you, how can they do that? If they want to reach out to you, how can they do that, Rachel?
On Twitter, I'm Rachel Recruits, and they may find some political rantings there, so fair warning. Representing the views of Rachel, not ShopRunner. And they can always email me direct here at ShopRunner or find me on LinkedIn.
Rachel's music, you can go to posthoneymoon.com. Yes?
Yep.
Girls?
Look at it on Spotify.
So good. Rachel, thank you so much for being part of the Tech Recruit podcast. I will see you September 18th, and we'll be having the pre-conference party at LinkedIn's headquarters in Chicago. I don't know if I told you that. Yes, it'll be a lot of fun.
I saw it. I'll be there.
I know. I'm like,
All right.
apparently it's amazing.
I love LinkedIn
Okay.
and their headquarters, but I love the company, all the folks we work with.
I told them, I said, if you want to find a recruiter, they're going to be on LinkedIn. It just makes sense that you guys would want to host our post party. So I'm like, yes, our pre-party. And then if that works out, they'll do it in New York and in San Francisco. And so, we'll see how this goes. This is a new relationship for me.
Nice.
Well, I will see you soon, and you have yourself a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
I had never seen Tom Petty in concert before, and I don't know if it's because I'm a new mom and I hadn't got out of the house a lot, but it was so moving. It was just, I felt like the whole crowd was into it. It was just like one of those
Yeah.
song.
Oh my gosh, that is so hard. I'm a sucker for, I don't know why, I love the verses of Last Dance with Mary Jane so much. I just love the songwriting. But like all of them.
The song came on, in one desperate moment there, he crept into her memory. And I'm just like, God is so painful, right? And you're just like,
Yes.
singing it.
Yes, amazing. It's like every song is an anthem.
Yeah, right? That to your life.